So David, tell me a little bit about yourself as a coach.
Okay, that's a big question. Where to start? I think for me, the place that I would really love to start, and this may not come as a surprise, is the beginning. And it started actually back when I was a director of studies. So I was managing language schools. And more I started to have these one-on-one meetings with students outside classes. And in these meetings, the interactions that we were having, there was something different about them, something that hadn't been happening in classes before. But I didn't know what it was. And it was actually on a short holiday in Portugal that I realized what was happening. So on this trip in Portugal, I got on the bus, on the coach, in fact, ironically enough. And when I sat down, I saw this girl just making a beeline for me. She came and sat down right next to me. The bus was completely empty, but next to me she sat. Turns out I was actually sitting in her seat. And it also turns out that she was a life coach. And so we got to talking in Spanish because she is from Colombia. And the more I heard what she was talking about, the more I realized, oh, like that's what I've been doing. And so that's really where my journey started. And it was actually a journey that I had already begun without realizing it. So when I went back to Spain, where I was living at the time, I started exploring, trying to discover what it was I was doing and how I wanted to step into that. Because I knew that though I was helping people, managing the school and teaching, there was more that I could do. And so I started looking into it and I decided to start off with language coaching, which is one of the sides of what I do now. Now, as a language coach, it's kind of like combining life coaching and language teaching. I show my clients how to learn any language rather than teaching them a language. We look at language acquisition skills, but we also focus very heavily on mindset, confidence and self-belief, time management, and creating really strong habits and routines. And so I started with that because for me, coaching is an incredibly important thing to do. And with that comes a lot of responsibility. So when I decided to go into coaching, the first training that I did online, I chose because it had such a heavy focus on the ethical side of it. In fact, I remember one of the first videos that I saw about this course, and it was talking about when you shouldn't coach, which I actually really loved. That this course about, okay, how do you coach someone? What can you do? They were like, don't, basically. Yeah. And they talked a lot about if someone is overcoming trauma or trying to essentially become whole again. If they feel like something has happened that has left them not whole, and they're on that journey back to feeling whole, that's not necessarily the space for a coach to come in. Now, since that time, I've seen this through a lens of more subtlety. There are more gray areas to that, of course, but I really liked that idea. And so my journey as a coach, when it began, interestingly enough, was actually one of embracing my imposter syndrome. Now, I'm sure you will have come across this in the coaching sphere as well. We hear lots of people talking about like overcoming the imposter syndrome, not letting it win. For me though, the imposter syndrome is a type of fear. And I have a different relationship with emotions like fear and sadness. I know a lot of people describe them as negative emotions. For me, I don't use that word because language, as is probably quite obvious by now, is very important to me. I call them growth emotions because fear and sadness are actually reflections of other emotions. Sadness, I often like to describe it as the echo of joy. Sadness is often when we remember something that brought us joy that we no longer have in our lives. But by that very token, it is a type of joy. It is the absence of joy. But when you notice something is not there, you notice the thing. Just like if I say to you, and here's a classic one, don't think of an elephant. What are you thinking about?
Elephants.
Exactly. So sadness is when we are thinking of the joy we don't have, which means we are thinking of the joy. What it does is it propels us to find that joy again. Same with fear. Fear is actually a protection instinct. It is our animal brain trying to keep us safe. So for me, these emotions are growth emotions. Then other emotions like happiness, joy, excitement, interest, these for me are reward emotions or comfort emotions. Not necessarily good or bad, Because as so many people nowadays say, that idea of like seeking discomfort and getting out of your comfort zone, often these emotions can be the emotions that allow us to stop. It's when we want to grow that we often find ourselves confronted again with fear or sadness or doubt. So these emotions are powerful. And for me, this idea of the imposter syndrome is part of that. I wanted to harness my imposter syndrome to make sure I was really taking into account the full weight of what I was getting into. One of the things that I did early on was actually talk to my brother-in-law, because he works in mental health. And at the time he was working in a mental health hospital, particularly working with high-risk women. And the reason I wanted to talk to him is I knew that in his mental health institution, there were some women who had ended up there, directly or indirectly, through their experience with life coaches. And what I wanted to know is, how can I make sure I'm safeguarding the people that I work with? I want to have a profound impact on their lives. I want to be there while they change and step into the role that they deserve to live out day by day. And I want to make sure I'm doing that in a responsible and caring way. And so that's how my journey started. And it still underpins my practice so much today. I still have moments when clients will bring something up and I say caringly and compassionately, have a think about how you'd like to treat that issue. We can absolutely talk about it. And if I feel like we are moving into an area that I am not qualified to support you in, again, I will communicate that to you with kindness, with compassion. And the response has always been fantastic. I feel like I've definitely met coaches who, through a desire to do good, engage with things that they may not be ready to fully support people through. Because we are not therapists, we are not psychologists. And it's important for us to have that idea of responsibility in order to support our clients fully. So that is one of the things that really underpins my coaching nowadays.
That responsibility is so important. And I think that it's a fundamental piece of every coaching practice. For me, I really make sure that I outline that as well before I start working with people of, hey, we just need to know that we are going to get really personal here. You're my coach, or I'm your coach. We're going to get really personal here. So we need to be able to trust each other, and you need to be able to trust me to say, this is out of my realm of my ability. For people who haven't experienced coaching, there's frequently the question of what's the difference between coaching and therapy? And you're already hinting at this a lot. So how do you as a coach explain that?
It's such a fab question. And yeah, I've definitely come across this many times, as I'm sure you have, as I'm sure most coaches have. I mean, I'm a coach, so obviously I love dealing in metaphors. The way that I like to think about it is something like therapy, and I'm speaking from a place of opinion here, not as an expert, because I am not a therapist. But the way that I see it is, therapy is like looking back over your shoulder, trying to think about the path that led you to where you are, to understand where you are and make peace with it. It's a journey of healing and a journey to wholeness. Not to say that people are not whole, and this is really important. They perceive themselves as less than whole. And this perception becomes their reality. Whereas coaching, I see as looking forward with wing mirrors. Coaching is informed by the past, but very rarely focuses on it. Coaching is growth-centered, it is forward-focused. And so while there are things from their past, which will actually often be resolved and addressed through coaching, it's not where the focus lies. We're not taking them back to their past so much as allowing them to step into their future. The other thing is partly the way that you are communicating. So coaching is very question-based, particularly open question-based. One of the things that I focus on very heavily in my coaching is not to plant ideas in the minds of my clients. Now, that is not to say that therapy does, but for me, the focus is very much on how can I leave this space open. So I will very rarely ask closed questions. That is like yes or no questions, or questions with limited options. So for example, instead of me saying, do you think that's because you lack confidence? I would ask more, what do you think causes that to happen? So allowing them to explore the space, because this is really the key. The client guides the journey. The coach is there as a safeguard, as a guide as well. But in the same way that a good guide will take you through the jungle and they will take you to all the interesting places, a great guide lets you take you through the jungle. But then when it's necessary, they show you an interesting element that you may have seen. They draw your attention to things, but they allow you to lead the journey.
I love the way that you put that with the looking out the windshield with the mirrors behind. I feel that anybody that's experienced both therapy and coaching feels the very distinct difference between the two.
Absolutely.
And if you haven't experienced either one, it's harder to explain. However, if you've gone through one or the other, it's a very different environment, a very different strategy, and a very different system. So tell me more about the role that you play today. We've heard about leading up to this point, but what do you do as a language coach and how do you help people now?
So again, another great question. I've got a feeling they're all going to be pretty great. So there are two sides to what I do. One is language coaching, which actually, interestingly enough, is becoming the lesser side of what I do. The life coaching side, particularly as I call it, global lifestyle coaching, I focus particularly on working with digital nomads, global entrepreneurs, people who, for one reason or another, may not have a fixed geographical home. The opportunity this allows us is to find a home within themselves. Because so many people traveling the world feel on some level lost. Their routines are not fitting in with the lifestyle that they imagine. They're not making the connections. And they don't feel like the person they set out to be when they chose this life. This is where I come in. I allow them to rediscover that version of themselves. And this is so important. When I work with my clients, we work a lot with avatars. It's a similar concept to the book, The Alter Ego Effect, creating this almost superhero version of yourself. And at the same time, realizing that you already are that version of yourself. The easiest comparison I can make is to Superman, right? Who is the true identity? Clark Kent or Superman? Well, realistically, both of them. They're elements of the same person. And this is what I work on both with my language coaching clients and my life coaching clients. Inside, they know who they want to be. The key is they may not have realized who that is yet. And on an even deeper level, they probably haven't realized that they already are. One of the first things that we do is we flesh out this avatar. We create this version of themselves. To give you an example, I have my own, of course. I have a couple. And my avatar is called the Warrior Poet. And this version of me, because it is a version of me, embodies the values and the behaviors that I want to embody on a regular basis. And the great thing is now that I see that, it allows me to find myself in situations where I want to embody that version of myself and ask myself, what would I do as the warrior poet right now? And it allows me to step into that role in a way that I couldn't necessarily do if I hadn't clarified that vision of who I want to be, and indeed, who I already am.
I love what you're saying right now because I use very similar tools. I think that much of coaching does use similar tools. We all use embodiment, we all use future practices, but it's rare that I hear my own version of that tool is an embodiment of the 10-year future self. And how can we use that? What values does that person have? What have they already achieved? What advice? But the warrior poet that you're talking about here, man, what a gift.
I mean, he's dressed like a samurai and he is a badass, and therefore, so am I. But actually, you mentioned something really, really poignant there, which is this idea of like the 10-year future self. Right. I think this is so vital as well, knowing that the visions that we create for the future are not fixed. They grow because we do. There's that old phrase that you can never cross the same river twice because the water flows, everything changes. We are a different person in each second, in each minute, in each hour, week, day, month, year. So this avatar that we create grows as we do. The identity may even change. So today, I embody the warrior poet. Who's to say that 10 years down the line, I'm not embodying the silken superhero? Who knows?
I guess we'll have to wait and see what happens next.
Yeah, watch this space.
So tell me a little bit more about the coaching certification that you took. Where did that come from?
So I've done a couple of different certifications and various online training programs as well. The first one that I did was actually from a group called the Life Coach Training Institute. And as I said, the thing that really called out to me was the fact that it had this really strong focus on ethics, but also that it had a really strong focus on practice. So as I was training, there were exercises for you to carry out in real life. So you found peers or you found friends that you could have this trusted relationship with and try these things out. Because a lot of things that I've seen online in terms of training and coaching, one, they're very business focused, which, don't get me wrong, is important. It is important to realize that coaching is a business. And it's easy to forget that because what we want to do is serve. We want to do is help people. The thing is, if you don't earn enough money to survive, you stop being able to. And this is something that I learned from this course as well, that while it doesn't need to be the main focus, it's important to have it in mind. But as I said, the real thing that drew me to that course was this focus on ethics, the focus on practice. And so I was actually doing that course when I was here in Da Nang a couple of years ago. And no, coming up to 3 years ago now. Time, it's a relative concept. And so I was doing that course, and with friends here and people online, I was practicing these things and found that it just came so naturally to me. I mean, as I said, for a couple of years before that, I had been doing this without even realizing. What I was really finding out was how to give a name to what I was doing, how to structure it properly. And so at the end of that course, I then signed up to another coaching platform. So you may be familiar with Mind Valley. So they have a sister platform, which at the time was called EverCoach. Now it has become Mind Valley Coach. And so I was part of their platform doing various online trainings around NLP, crafting a methodology to create a bit more consistency and structure to the transformation I was making with my clients, but also engaging in coaching pods, which was a gorgeous, gorgeous exercise where coaches would come together in groups of 3, and we would each coach each other. One being the coach, one being the client, and one being the observer. This was fundamental in my development as a coach because I was getting the chance to practice and receive active feedback from other people in the field. And this was amazing for me. The most recent training I've done was actually specific to language coaching. And it's interesting because it's the only language coaching course which is certified by the ICF. And so that really called out to me. Because I love to diversify, I love to be able to help people in various different ways. And the balance that this language coaching course offered between life coaching and applying it to language development was really, really gorgeous. But that's just the beginning. For me, as I talked about responsibility for coaches, we have this opportunity to never stop growing. Because if we want to be able to serve better, we want to make sure that we are also growing and developing so that we can serve in new ways in the future. And that is one of the commitments that I make to myself and to my clients, the ones that I'm serving now and the ones that I will serve in the future, maybe as the warrior poet or the silken superhero, or who knows?
I guess we'll have to wait and see what develops.
Absolutely.
I really love coaching that involves the coach training that involves the pod structure.
Absolutely.
I'm trained by CTI, and they go back and forth whether you're split into pairs, split into 3s, or split into 4s, and they all serve their own unique purposes.
Great.
But having that opportunity to coach, to receive coaching, and to receive feedback coaching, as well as when you get to more traditional training, like if you get what's the credential body that you just named?
The ICF.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you get into the ICF, they have their required mentor coaching hours.
Absolutely.
Just to have the opportunity for you to get out there, coach, to do what you're supposed to be doing, but have somebody who knows more than you to teach you. It's about that free flow of information up and down, right?
Absolutely.
So tell me more about your story of transitioning from being a language teacher into coaching. How has that developed over the last few years?
So it's been a really interesting journey, actually. I started off, as I said, having this gorgeous dialogue with my doubt and my imposter syndrome. and also my fear. And part of the fear was this sustainability of coaching. Because when you go online as a coach and you say like, okay, I want to become a coach, I want to serve people, a lot of what you come across is very business focused. And you have these people saying, you can earn this, you can earn that, you can earn the other. And that never really called to me. What I wanted to be able to do was support myself, sustain a lifestyle, which allowed me to do this full time. Now, I didn't quite dare, if I'm honest, go full time right from the beginning. So I started off by taking a step down from a management role and going back to teaching. And that's actually when I came out to Vietnam. So I was teaching at a university here. And while I was doing that, I was doing my coaching training. Interestingly enough, my first coaching client was someone who trained me online when I was at the university. And while we were doing the training, I mean, people have said that I am quite memorable, possibly because I'm quite loud. And so when I got on this training call with this guy, he said, David, right? I was like, yeah. He's like, I've heard about you. I've been looking forward to this call. I was like, oh, all right. And so as we were doing the training, we also talked about the fact that I was doing my training to become a coach. And he said, well, dude, like when you finish, I would love to hear about it. And so we touched base once I'd finished my coaching, and that ended up being the conversation that led us to taking on a coaching agreement, and he became my first client. And the gorgeous thing about it was that when I came back to Vietnam this year, the first thing that I did was go down to Ho Chi Minh for his wedding. And so being able to see that journey from us meeting in this training, going through our coaching relationship, and then years later coming back and being at his wedding was phenomenal. So that's, again, kind of where my coaching journey started, that transition began. At the time, I was still teaching. Not long after, I actually did go back into a management role because someone that I know in France contacted me to ask if I would be willing to go over to France to manage their school. And so then the journey continued with me developing my coaching business and my coaching practice while also managing the school. The nice thing was I was able to apply the skills that I had been learning as a coach while managing the school, not just in terms of supporting the students, but supporting the staff and the team as a whole. While there, though, I still felt that pull. And I knew that where I really wanted to be committing myself was to coaching. Because at that time, I was also working with clients, and the transformation that I was seeing in their lives was like nothing that was happening in the school. And more I found myself in a coaching role in the school. The support that people were calling out for very much led me into a role of coaching. And here is something that for me, I think is also really important with coaching and life in general, and that is consent. This, for me, is in almost all conversations, even conversations with my partner. If I feel that the questions that I want to ask are being informed by the part of me that is a coach, I will ask their permission to ask those questions. I will explain that the questions that I am coming up with are being more informed by the side of me that is a coach. How do you feel about me asking those questions? Because this is so important. As coaches, we are desperate to serve people, right? Like we hear something and think, oh, I feel like I could help. I feel like I could support you. The key is people have to be ready for that kind of support. They have to want that kind of support. Just like in the coaching relationship, the client guides, the client also asks. So if they ask for that kind of support, you provide it. But for me, I wait until that question is asked, or I make an offer in a way that is very, very comfortable to refuse if they wish. And so with all of this happening, as I was managing the school, I realized it was time. It was time for me to be as brave as I was encouraging my clients to be. And so that's when I came back to Vietnam. And it's since being here that I have gone full time. And the rewards of that on so many levels have been phenomenal. Since I came here, I've taken on more clients in the space of a couple of months than I did in the last 2 years. The transformations that I'm seeing in those people are even more profound. And in these sessions, I'm coming out regularly, like covered in goosebumps, ecstatic to the point of just dancing around my apartment, and frankly in awe of the fact that this is what I do. Like this is my day to day. One of the developments since being here in Vietnam in terms of transition has also been that I am now a public speaker, which was something that I always loved the idea of doing and saw that it went very well with the world of coaching. I just hadn't realized it would happen this quickly. And so this year, very, very recently, in fact, I was speaking at the Vietnam Nomad Fest, and I ran a couple of workshops for them. Since that happening, I've now been confirmed at 3 other events in 3 other countries to speak on stage again. And so the idea that I will get to share what I've been sharing with my clients on some level on these stages, connect with people on that scale, is just unbelievable.
Such beauty in that, man. What I hear coming from your story as well is the embodiment of coaching, right? You had the skills and you were learning them and you were practicing them in various ways. And for some people it happens quickly, for some people it happens slowly. But coaching is not just a career path. It's not just something that you do from 9 to 5. It's a role that you step into. I really hear the balance that you have in creating in your own life. This is coming from my coaching side. Is it okay if we go there? Because it's important to have that consent. And it can be really hard to balance that with friends, family members, every relationship that you have. But when you go from just being the person that people can talk to honing and refining this skill and having an offering to give to this world, it becomes so prevalent to share. I love to hear about the rapid success that you have since fully stepping in and embodying the role and going from, okay, I can coach, to okay, I will fully coach, to okay, coaching is what I will share with the world. So tell me more about, with your clients, you help them build out this avatar and step into that role. We have the warrior poet here sitting in front of me. What are some more of the tools that you use on a regular basis?
Well, in terms of tools, I had a really gorgeous moment in one of the training sessions that I did on my language coaching course, because one of the trainers is an ICF mentor and particularly focused on the ethical side. And she is very, very connected with what she describes as pure coaching. And one of the things that she said is, with pure coaching, there are no tools. It's all questions. And this was really eye-opening for me, because I was in the position, which I think a lot of new coaches are, where I'm collecting tools. I'm like, right, I can do this thing, I can do that thing, I've got this up my sleeve. And what she said is, who are those tools for? And I realized that in many ways, the tools were for me. And particularly coming from a teaching background and as a manager, I would go in with a plan. These tools were my plan. And while I'm not saying anything against tools, they are incredibly powerful and incredibly useful. The thing that I really learned to do in that moment was transform my tools into questions. So for example, with goal setting, I love an acronym. And one of the acronyms that I use is ATLAS, ATLAS. This is a way for my clients and myself, I use it regularly as well, to clarify actions they want to take and empower them to take those actions sustainably. A stands for action. You define what you want to do. T stands for time. You decide when you're going to do it. T also stands for trigger. And trigger is a word that gets thrown about a lot nowadays. I tend to use trigger in a very neutral way. It's when something causes something else to happen. So here, thinking of like the ideas in Atomic Habits, the trigger is the thing that prompts you to take action. One of the examples that I give often is brushing your teeth. So for example, for me, I want to strengthen my wrists because I love climbing, I love doing calisthenics, and also I read in a longevity book that there are strong ties between your grip strength and your lifespan. Now, I'm not saying that doing like wrist exercises means I'm going to live forever, but I feel like it can't hurt. So let's say my action is strengthening my wrist. So I use my wrist resistance things. I don't know what they're called. The wristy things. So I use my wristy things while I'm brushing my teeth. So my trigger is brushing my teeth because I know I'm going to brush my teeth. Next, you move on to location. So location for me, surprise, surprise, is the bathroom. So it's where you're going to do the action. This can also be the resources you're going to use. So for example, I learn a lot of languages because I'm a polyglot and a language coach. Makes sense. So for me, location can also be a notebook, a mobile phone. So it's what tools you're using. Where are you doing it? On my phone, in my notebook. In this case, in the bathroom. Next, we move on to A again, and this is attraction. Two elements here once more. How do you make this action more attractive to you? So for example, I could get nice toothpaste. So while I'm doing my wrist exercises and brushing my teeth, I enjoy the flavor. I can also make it more accessible. So I actually have my wristy things hanging on a little hook by the sink. So this makes the action easier and therefore more attractive. I don't need to go searching for them when I want to do it. The other side of attraction is reward. So how am I rewarding myself for doing this action? So here, something simple could be used. For example, if I get a run of 7 days doing this action, then I get to watch an episode of my favorite anime. I love anime. And then finally is S, and this is sharing. So I share with the people in my life this new habit that I'm taking on. And what we're looking for with sharing is what we call positive accountability. Someone who will drive you forward, but not critique. Because with the development of habits, the way that I do it with my clients, we don't work with streaks. We're not Duolingo over here. We work with cumulative streaks. That is to say, if my aim is 7 days, they don't need to be consecutive. So if I do 3 days, then 1 day I don't, then 3 days, then 1 day I don't, then 1 more day, I've reached my checkpoint. I will define a checkpoint in time with someone that I care about, that I feel I can get this positive support from. If on the checkpoint day I haven't reached my goal yet, they will ask me questions to drive me forward to getting it. So I say, okay, great. This week you managed to do 50% of what you wanted. What's going to be different this week that gets you the whole way? As opposed to saying like, don't worry, man, like you've been really busy. People excusing us is them coming from a place of kindness, but not coming from a place of faith. If you believe in someone, you push them with love. So we are not saying that your effort was not good enough. We are saying, okay, this is where you got. I know where you want to go. How are you going to get there? The process that I went through after this training I was mentioning is reframing this structure rather than giving them the steps, asking them the questions. Because the questions they can ask themselves. So we have, what is the action you want to take? When will you do it? What will trigger it? Where will you do it? How will you make it attractive? How will you reward yourself for doing it? Who will you share it with? How will you celebrate? What are you aiming to achieve? So these questions embody the tool, but they keep the control in the hands of the client. Rather than me saying like, give me the action. I am requesting something. They need to fulfill my list of requirements. Whereas if I ask a question, they can go off wherever they want. And it may well be that the action changes because of that process. So we give them the autonomy and the control.
That autonomy is powerful. Something early on in my coaching school days, some of the most powerful sessions that I had were when the client came to the exact opposite realization of what I would have told them to do.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, unless that realization is something that will put them in direct harm or danger, that is a way more powerful thing for that person. They know what is right for them, not me. So it's allowing them to come to that space of what is right for them. You mentioned the peer coaching. This is my first time hearing about that concept, but it's really beautiful, right? And being in that moment, who are those tools for? The exact opposite of what I talk about a lot is a proverbial tool basket, in that each of us as a coach has our proverbial tool basket. For you, you've got avatars and the Atlas tool and language skills, things like that, right? And my tool basket is different, and everyone else that comes on the show has a different basket.
Absolutely.
And the idea of, all right, let's take that basket, just throw that out and just be present in the moment, that's just yet another tool that I'm going to stuff in that basket.
There's some sort of paradox in there somewhere.
Not quite ready to let go of it yet. However, the idea is being stored.
Well, I think that the point you're making is bang on the money. I mean, I completely agree with you. I think the key is really, they say a good magician never reveals their tricks, right? The way I like to describe it is more from the point of view of martial arts. So a true martial arts master is aiming to use the absolute minimum of their skill, knowledge, and power. Because if I'm a martial arts master, I could kill you with my pinky, and I don't want to do that. So by the same token, I have all of these tools, but I want to use the bare minimum in order to get you where you want to go. The key about being a master is, in the moment where I realize something is called for, I have it, and I can pull it out. The key for me is that transformation process. I have my big old basket of tools, and I haven't thrown it away. It's right here with me. The key is that when I take something out, you don't see it. So it's all in the sleight of hand, just like a magician. The key is, in a good coaching relationship, the client doesn't know they're being coached. They do as they come into the session. They know they are in the room with their coach. But it feels like a conversation that takes them somewhere they never knew they could go. Maybe even somewhere the coach never knew they could let someone go. So I think that your instinct resonates really strongly with the way that I do things. It's more about this transformation of the tools. Having these tools empowers us because we see behind the curtain. That's our job. That's our responsibility. The key is the show, which in some ways it is, should feel natural. The stories that we engage with are the ones where we forget it is a story and we lose ourselves. And coaching allows clients to lose themselves in the process so they can find the version of themselves they were looking for.
Yeah.
I will take that reaction.
Absolutely, man. See, where do you go from there?
Well, if I may, I'm now very curious.
Absolutely.
What have you got in your tool basket?
What have I got in my tool basket? So I am a values-based coach. At the beginning of starting with me, day one, session one, and actually the way that the majority of my clients meet me is through a workshop on value-based decision-making. Let's explore your intrinsic values. And let's really come into that. And the idea as a whole is just to get people to come into themselves. Let's be more aware of the essence of you as a person. And then the value-based decision-making is let's just apply 5 words to that essence. But more important than these 5 words is giving them the ability to come in and embody that. And then from there, we use these words to build out the ideas of how you want to structure your life. We use that for boundaries, we use that for relationships, we use that for goals, but it all comes from this place of self. Just like you have the avatar of a place of self, everything is about getting people to come into this place of self and to use that to move forward through their journey, right?
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And how did you come to that tool? Because that's involved, that's complex.
How does anybody come to anything?
That's an excellent question, yeah.
How does anybody come to anything? So a piece of that was the primary exercise from that workshop actually came straight out of coaching school, CTI in Singapore. But beyond that, before I even got into coaching, I had become familiar with the question of, tell me who you are without using your name, your job title, or your relationship to anyone else. And it was just a combination of that. Then through teaching my workshop on value-based decision-making and starting to coach people coming out of that, it was, all right, we already have this basis of, you know how I work, this is my workshop, how can we take that and build off of that? And it's just developed into its entire thing. I think that both an upbringing and a downfall of modern coaching are standardized packages. And I am guilty. I have a standardized 10-week package. For me as a coach, that 10-week package, more than actually applying to people, gives me something to talk about the exact way and the structure that I coach, so people can have an idea of if they resonate with it. And if they do, fantastic. And then we usually talk about the package and throw it away, and I develop something special. But do you have a standard package that you use? Do you have a standard length of time that you coach?
Yeah, absolutely. And as I think you were saying there, it's very, very common in the coaching world. And I think that really anything can be effective. It will all depend on the person you're working with, as you said. And I actually really like the idea of having something relatively standardized, using it, just like you described, as a jumping off point. Because in many ways, coaching is an unknown entity for a lot of people. So having something that they can really understand, that feels accessible to them, allows them to see if it's something that can work for them. The process then is personalized based on their experience, your interactions. So with my clients, particularly individual clients, one-on-one, we will work together initially for 12 weeks. The aim is for that to be all of the time that we work together. While it's not a limit, that is where we will have our checkpoint. And to date, that's the longest I've worked with any client, because we've got to the end of the 12 weeks and I said, what do you want to do now? I said, live my life. They got where they wanted to go. And while as a business person, that's obviously not necessarily a desired outcome, as a coach, it's exactly what I look for. And this is really the way that I like to run my business. I run it values first. Yes, getting repeat clients would be great on the business side of things, but it's not what I want. I want to get them where they want to go. I want them to get themselves where they want to go in that time. If then they come back to me later with a new vision, a new goal, that's something different. And that's what started to happen recently. But yeah, so with individual clients, we will work together for 12 weeks. Now, what I'm actually going to be doing over the next 2 months, which is very exciting, I'm going to be heading over to India, and I'm going to be living in a jungle for 2 weeks. 2 weeks? No, 2 months, sorry. Yeah. And while I'm there, I'm going to be creating my online courses. So they're going to be two sides. One is going to be language coaching called Fearless Fluency, and the other is going to be my global lifestyle coaching, particularly focusing on mindset, confidence, and stepping into this avatar that you want to embody. That is called the inner compass, because we find that direction and that drives us forward. So I will have these 2 12-week courses, and from there will also be group cohort courses that I'll be running live with people, and then I will continue working with individual clients at the same time. So this is really how I'm going to be structuring it. And just as you have described, these courses have a clear structure, but that is what allows us to use it as a jumping off point and adapt to the people involved. Now, the other reason these courses are created, and I think this is the other value of it, is coaching is an investment. It is a serious investment. Some people don't feel that they're ready to make that investment. In some ways, because they don't have faith in themselves that they can make the changes they really want. Something like a group online coaching program can be wonderful for that, because it allows them to go at their own pace, have that support, but also maybe have a smaller financial investment so they can really test the water. They can build that faith in themselves. They can see the results that they can get that allow them to go on and make real transformational changes.
It really is a big hang up for people to get it to start with a coach. When you're talking about sometimes tens of thousands of dollars for 6, 10, 12, 8 weeks, but it's all about what you need, the coaches that you resonate with, and where you're trying to get to. How much are you willing to commit? I love the way that you talk about the amount of time being 12 weeks. I have a shared goal that at the end of this coaching, I want to be fired.
Not the word I would use, but absolutely, I see where you're coming from.
For my income purposes, it would be great to have people renew with me over and over and over again. And if anybody needs that continued support, that's fantastic. But my job as a coach, the way I view it, is to give you the tools to not need me anymore. I don't want to gatekeep anything. There's no secrets that I'm trying to hold back. I want you to know everything, to be able to move forward in this world without me.
Absolutely. And that's so valuable. It really is, because us coming in with that intention spreads it to them. Our aim is their empowerment, and that reflects and becomes their aim if it wasn't already, which hopefully it was. One of the ways that I ensure this, so you mentioned before when we were talking about the responsibility and the ethical side of things, particularly in terms of areas where they may be better working with a therapist or a psychologist. And I have a similar thing. And when I am talking to potential clients, one of the things I make very clear to them is that if you feel you need to work with me, this is not the right relationship. You don't need to work with me. Nobody needs to work with a coach. But they can decide to. They have the power to make that decision. Anyone can get where they want to go by themselves. The key is that working with a coach may make it quicker, may make it more efficient, more pleasurable, more joyful. But as soon as someone tries to work with me from a place of need, I am doing them a disservice. What I impress upon them from the very start is if you decide to work with me, it is a powerful decision that you have taken because you are going to make a change in your life. And I will be there with you. I will accompany you on this journey. It is a journey that you take and you lead. And this is actually connected with the way I price my coaching as well. I have a fairly alternative pricing system in that my clients decide the price of their program. Now, I provide a range based on what clients have paid in the past to give them a guide. Because I've found that when I'm working with clients and leave it completely open, it's actually almost stressful for them because they have no idea where to start. So I give them the information in terms of what clients in the past have paid, but then they decide. Because the important thing for me is they are not paying for the value of my time. They are making an investment in themselves. They are deciding what their goal, their outcome, their transformation means to them energetically. And one of the ways that we commonly perceive energy nowadays is money. And so there are two criteria that I share with my clients, my potential clients. One, this should feel like enough of a financial commitment that it represents a promise to yourself. It will drive you forward, much in the same way that people sign up to a gym because they know it will make them work out. It provides this positive push. This positive accountability is in that amount. And at the same time, it shouldn't pose a financial strain. This should not be something that makes their life difficult because they've invested in it, because they can then start to resent the process. So we want their investment to be meaningful above all and sustainable. And whether this is a good business model, I don't know. So far, it has worked very well. And the amounts that my clients have invested have sometimes been very unexpected to me. For example, my first client, I decided to use this pricing model. And at that time, it was actually connected with my own insecurity. Because I had just become a coach, I had been a teacher and a manager before that. I had no idea what the correct amount was for a client to invest in themselves for this transformation. And so I decided, based on the values that I have, to make it a collaborative process. And the amount that this client chose was actually higher than I had thought. And this tells me two things. One, I was focusing on it wrong. Well, not wrong, differently, let's say. I was focusing on my value, when what I wanted to be doing was focusing on their investment, their value, their outcome. The second was they get their result based on their commitment. And so them choosing the amount means they will choose the amount that is the right one to drive them forward. Another element of it, when I was learning to coach right at the beginning, is in these initial calls when I contact people, making sure that they are committed to the process, making sure it's important to them. And one of the questions that I was taught to ask is, on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is it that you act now? And we were told that if the number is below an 8, that person is probably not ready for coaching. They may be in the future, but if this is not a real desire, if this is not going to signify real transformation, the coaching process might not be right in that moment. The thing is, our perception of how important something can shift. So I had people where we would have initial calls and they would say like, yeah, this is like a 9 out of 10, a 10 out of 10. But then through the rest of the conversation, I could see that actually the way they were talking, the way they were acting and describing what they wanted to achieve didn't fit with that. There was an incongruency. And this pricing system, I have found, also allows you to see that. There was one client that I was talking to about a program, and the amount that she said she wanted to invest was very, very low, proportionate to her lifestyle. What this showed me was it was something that she was interested in doing, but not committed to doing. So in that moment, we talked about other options that fit with her level of commitment. And in that conversation, I didn't say, you are not committed, because that's not for me to decide. It is my own perception. But I offered her options, and she did indeed take an option that was less intensive. The transformation was lesser, but still significant. And then later on, we talked about other coaching services because she reached a new place. And this, for me, is a really important part of what I do as well. I like everything to be client-driven, underpinned by my support, by my experience, by my tools, hidden though they may be, but guided by them from the very first conversation.
Almost everyone has a different way of getting people started or getting started as a coach, right? And for me, the way that I started when I was feeling a little bit uncomfortable, insecure about pricing was I actually just went out and made a Facebook post of, hey, I'm starting to do this thing. I still feel a little bit weird about it. So you can just pay a charity and then we both feel good. But what I hear you talking about is the amount of investure that people are willing to give. And yes, that is a monetary thing, but especially as a new coach, when you're just out there trying to get your feet wet, trying to coach new people, the coaching for free, you rarely see as much progress with people than when people are truly invested.
Absolutely.
You need to get people invested. So I love your system of pricing. We'll see how that plays out for you long term, but especially now, it sounds like it's resonating. It sounds like it's going well. And if it's working, there's no need to change it, right?
Exactly.
So you go to India for 2 months. What else is on the horizon for you in the near future?
Oof, that ends up being a very big question. So there have been some big developments over the last couple of months. And in many ways, it was Vietnam Nomad Fest that served as the catalyst for that. So I applied to be a speaker and was accepted. And when I stepped on that stage, it just felt natural. It felt like a place I was supposed to be. And that is what prompted me to reach out to others. And so in July, I'll be in Bilbao speaking with a group called Citizen Circle. It's a group in Germany, and I'll be speaking at their summer conference in Bilbao. I'll be one of the 2 keynote speakers, and interestingly enough, the first English-speaking speaker that they have had, although I must admit I am playing around with some German just to get ready. After that, I will be spending some time with my family, as it's been a while since I've been back to the UK, and I'll be serving my clients from there before heading to Athens Nomad Fest in September. From there, I'll be coming back to Southeast Asia, and I'll be speaking in Okinawa at their Nomad Resort. And I'm talking to other groups in Southeast Asia, which I won't mention until we've fleshed out the details. But by the end of the year, I'm hoping to have been on 5 stages to share with people in different countries and different walks of life, particularly with digital nomads and global entrepreneurs, like I said, because that is a group of people that I resonate with, having lived in so many different countries over the last years. It's been, I think, about 15 years since I left the UK, and I've lived in 8 different countries in 8 different languages since then. So that is one side of what's going on. But there are some other very interesting projects coming up. As we were talking about just this week, this Friday, I'm holding a speed coaching event with a group that I founded also here in Da Nang called Global Coach Hub. This is a small group of coaches, and we are providing a support network for coaches, which very soon will be expanding. And this is the first live event that we are going to be running. So it's going to give people an opportunity, just like we were saying, to have contact with coaching, to get an idea of what it is. This will then continue online. So one of the aims of Global Coach Hub is to create a support network around the world, not just for coaches, but for people who want to engage in coaching and discover what it is. There is another project, which again, I won't go into too much detail with because it's a grassroots project that I was talking to some collaborators about this week, but I'm very, very much looking forward to it. This will be more on the side of speakers, making connections between events globally and speakers who want to go and share and give value to these events. So there's a lot on the horizon this year and in future years.
Sounds like a big year coming up.
Yeah.
Just a shameless plug for Vietnam Nomad Fest.
There you go.
Thanks so much, guys. Really, they were such a transformational part of my own journey. They are how I have connected with so many of the coaches that I'm interviewing right now. And I cannot express my gratitude enough. And I just want to take a moment that your speech that day absolutely moved me as well. And it's inspired some of the work that I will continue to do over the next year. So for people who are just getting into the coaching space, what advice would you like to leave them with?
Such a great question. I would say engage with your fear. Because fear, in many ways, is like a wolf. When you run from the wolf, it will chase you. It's in its nature. But if we look at how wolves have changed over the years, we now find that they stand by our side as man's best friend. Dogs were once the wolves that hunted us, the wolves that chased us when we fled from them. How did that change come about? One day, we turned around. We looked that wolf in the eye, and we saw something there to connect with. And we realized that actually this fear, this wolf, can be one of our greatest protectors. So when you feel that fear, maybe even that imposter syndrome, use it. It is trying to protect you. It is trying to teach you. Allow it to guide you through the responsibility of what becoming a coach is. And that will make you a great coach, not just a good coach.
Incredible, David. Thanks so much for coming on and talking with me today.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And how do people connect with you?
Various ways. So on Instagram, I'm DG Lingua Coach. And I also have my website, www.dglinguacoach.com. And then through email as well. But really those two are the best ways to contact me, and I can direct them to other areas as they see fit.
Perfect. And there will be links to those in the comments section below.